In the dead of winter, 1939, the Soviet Union turned its gaze to its smaller northern neighbor, Finland. With an initial invasion force of nearly 500,000 soldiers, thousands of tanks, and a fleet of aircraft, Joseph Stalin expected a swift and decisive victory. It would be one quiet, unassuming farmer, barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, armed with an old, scopeless rifle that would be his greatest obstacle. This is the story of Simo Häyhä, a man who used the brutal Finnish winter as his weapon and became, by every credible measure, the deadliest sniper in the history of warfare. This is Monochrome Documentaries. We bring history's overlooked heroes to center stage. Simo Häyhä was born on December 17, 1905, in the small farming village of Rautjärvi, near the border of what was then the Russian Empire. His world was one of sprawling forests, harsh winters, and the quiet rhythm of farm life. As the seventh of 8 children, life taught him patience and resilience from a young age. The Finnish wilderness wasn't just his home, it was his classroom. While other boys were in school, Simo was in the woods, learning its secrets. He became an avid hunter, trekking through the dense forests that defined his Nordic country. His days were spent working the farm, but his real passion was marksmanship. And it wasn't just a hobby, it was a craft he honed with obsessive dedication. At 17, he joined the local civil guard, a voluntary militia that trained ordinary Finnish men to be ready for the moment their nation might need them. It was here that his extraordinary talent became undeniable. He filled his family home with trophies from shooting competitions. His skill was almost supernatural. In one famed account, he was able to hit a small target 150 meters away, 16 times in a single minute, all with a bolt-action rifle. At 19, he began his mandatory 15 months of military service, where he was quickly recognized for his abilities and trained as a non-commissioned officer. But after his service, he returned to the life he knew, farming and hunting. He cared little for the grand games of dictators and empires. He was a man of the land, fiercely independent, who valued his freedom and his country's liberty above all else. He was a man forged by the unforgiving Finnish environment. He understood the terrain, the cold, and the silence. He knew how to move unseen, how to wait, and how to strike with unnerving precision. He didn't know it yet, but his entire life had been an unconscious preparation for the war that was about to descend upon his homeland. The skills he had perfected hunting game would soon be turned upon a very different kind of prey. In the autumn of 1939, the world held its breath. Following the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which carved Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, the Soviet Union had a free hand to pursue its territorial ambitions. After making demands on the Baltic states, Stalin turned to Finland, demanding land concessions he claimed were necessary to protect Leningrad. The Finns, deeply distrustful of Soviet intentions, refused. The Soviet response was immediate and brutal. On November 30th, 1939, without a formal declaration of war, the Red Army invaded Finland. It was a conflict the world expected to be over in days. The Soviet Union unleashed an initial force of around 450,000 men, which would eventually swell by 100,000s more. They brought with them over 2,000 tanks and 1,000 aircraft. Against this behemoth stood the Finnish army, a small, poorly equipped force from a nation of just 4 million people. But the Finns had two advantages the Soviets had catastrophically underestimated: their indomitable will to defend their homeland, a spirit they called sisu, and the brutal Finnish winter. the Red Army marched into Finland. They entered a frozen hell. Temperatures plunged to as low as -40 degrees Celsius, -40 Fahrenheit, a cold so severe it could freeze machinery and men alike. The forests were blanketed in deep snow, turning the terrain into a trap for the ill-prepared Soviet forces. Their vehicles bogged down, supply lines were stretched thin, and their soldiers, clad in dark brown uniforms, stood out like dots against the endless white canvas. To make matters worse, Stalin's Great Purge of the 1930s had decimated the Red Army's experienced officer corps, leaving it disorganized and poorly led. The Finns, by contrast, were masters of this environment. They moved on skis, clad in white camouflage, melting into the landscape. They employed guerrilla tactics, launching swift, devastating attacks on isolated Soviet columns before disappearing back into the forest. They called this strategy Matti, which involved encircling and annihilating entire divisions. It was into this desperate, frozen struggle that 33-year-old Corporal Simo Häyhä was called to serve. He answered the call, grabbing his own personal rifle, and headed to the Kola River, a sector that would become a legendary symbol of Finnish resistance. It was here that the quiet farmer from Rautjärvi would become a specter of death. On the Kola front, a Finnish general famously declared, "Kola will hold," a promise that seemed impossible against overwhelming Soviet numbers. One of the men tasked with making that promise a reality was Simo Häyhä. Ordered by his commander to act as a sniper, Häyhä began a one-man war against the invaders, using methods honed by a lifetime of hunting in those same forests. First, and most famously, Häyhä refused to use a telescopic scope. He relied solely on the simple iron sights of his Finnish Mosin Nagin rifle. He knew better than the back of his hand. His reasoning was brutally practical. In the extreme cold, lenses would fog over or frost up. The glint of sunlight off a scope could betray a sniper's position. Most importantly, using a scope required raising his head higher, creating a more visible target. With iron sights, Häyhä could keep an incredibly low profile, almost becoming one with the snow. His camouflage was legendary. Dressed head to toe in white, he'd move out before dawn, carrying only a day's supply of food and ammo. He would meticulously prepare his firing nest, packing down the snow in front of his rifle barrel and sometimes pouring water on it to create an icy platform. This prevented the muzzle blast from kicking up a powdery cloud that would give away his location. In one of his most ingenious moves, he kept snow in his mouth to cool his breath, preventing the telltale plume of condensation from revealing him to the enemy. He was a ghost. He would lie perfectly still for hours, waiting for the perfect shot, often targeting officers to disrupt enemy command and morale. The results were terrifyingly effective. According to Finnish military records, his kill count began to climb at an astonishing rate. On December 21, 1939, he achieved his highest single-day count, 25 confirmed kills. In less than 100 days of fighting, he was credited with 505 confirmed sniper kills, a number that is difficult to verify with absolute certainty in the chaos of war, but which is widely accepted. He also became deadly with a Suomi KPS-31 submachine gun, and his total kill count is often estimated to be over 700. The Soviet soldiers, already battling cold and starvation, began to live in constant fear. They spoke of an unseen killer, a white death who stalked the forests. They were haunted by a man who could not be seen, who left no trace, and whose presence was only known by the sudden, silent fall of their comrades. As the legend of the White Death grew, so did the Red Army's desperation to eliminate him. Simo Häyhä was no longer just a soldier. He was a symbol of Finnish resistance and a devastating blow to Soviet morale. The Soviet command began to target him specifically, sending in their own counter-sniper teams. Häyhä, with his superior knowledge of the terrain, outmaneuvered and killed them. Frustrated, the Soviets escalated their efforts, calling in coordinated artillery strikes on any position where they merely suspected he might be hiding. On one occasion, a shell landed so close it ripped the back of his greatcoat to shreds. While the Soviets hunted him, his own country turned him into a national hero. On February 17, 1940, he was presented with a custom Sako M2830 honorary rifle. Yet, in the letters he sent home, he never mentioned his incredible feats. His family learned about his heroism on the radio. But even a legend is made of flesh and blood, and his luck was about to run out. On March 6, 1940, just days before the war's end, Häyhä was in the thick of a chaotic battle when a Soviet soldier fired an explosive bullet, striking him on the lower left side of his jaw. The impact was devastating. His comrades found him unconscious in the snow, his face a ruin, and believing him to be dead, placed him on a pile of bodies. It was only when someone noticed a foot twitching that they realized he was alive. He was evacuated and fell into a deep coma. In a moment of profound irony, the story is often told that Simo Häyhä awoke from his coma on March 13, 1940, the very day the Moscow Peace Treaty was signed, ending the Winter War. His fight was over. Simo Häyhä survived, but the war left its permanent mark. He spent over a year in recovery, enduring 26 surgeries to reconstruct his jaw and face. When the continuation war broke out against the Soviet Union, he volunteered to serve again, but his injuries were too severe. The government granted him a small farm, and he returned to the quiet, rural life he had known. His own family farm was now part of the territory ceded to the Soviet Union. Despite his legendary status, he was a deeply private and humble man. He rarely spoke of the war, becoming a successful moose hunter and dog breeder. A friend once said he spoke more with animals in the forest than with other people. In his later years, when asked how he became such a good shot, he gave a simple one-word answer: practice. When asked if he felt remorse for the men he killed, his response was that of a soldier defending his home. "I did what I was told, as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone had done the same." The man they called the White Death outlived the Soviet Union itself, passing away peacefully in a veterans' nursing home on April 1, 2002, at the age of 96. He was buried in his hometown, returning to the earth he had so fiercely defended. In the annals of military history, few stories are as raw and compelling as the tale of the quiet farmer who became a ghost in the snow. Simo Häyhä didn't have advanced technology or a massive army at his back. He had an old rifle, an intimate knowledge of his homeland, and an unshakable will to protect it. While he didn't stop the Red Army single-handedly, his actions were a vital part of Finland's incredible resistance. With 505 confirmed sniper kills in under 100 days, he set a record that will almost certainly never be broken. He was more than a soldier. He was a force of nature, a symbol of his nation's defiance, and a chilling lesson to an invading army that the deadliest weapon in any war is the determination of a single person fighting for their home. He remains, and will likely always remain, the single deadliest sniper to have ever lived. The story of Simo Häyhä is a powerful reminder of what one determined individual can achieve as part of a nation's unbreakable will. If you found this story of courage and resilience as incredible as we did, you would not want to miss the video we made on the greatest World War II escape story you will come across. Thanks for watching.